some legends don't just make history, they make more of themselves. Passing down a voice, a stage, and a bloodline of soul that refuses to stay silent. And today we're counting down 7 R&B icons whose own children picked up the microphone and carried the family name into the charts, sometimes into tragedy, and sometimes into pure magic that crossed the line between the living and the dead. Welcome back to Blue Rhythm R&B, the channel where we dig past the liner notes and into the real, verified stories behind the songs that built black music in America. From a Grammy-winning duet recorded 26 years after a father's death, to 2 brothers who turned their dad's grief into a funk band, this is a countdown of blood, harmony, and legacy. So stick around, because number 1 is going to give you chills. Number 7, Proud Mary by Ike and Tina Turner, released in 1971, is where this story starts. Ike Turner had already reshaped American music once. His 1951 recording Rocket 88 is widely credited by historians as one of the first rock and roll records ever cut. But it was his blistering, funk-soaked rework of Creedence Clearwater Revival's Proud Mary, with wife Tina, that finally handed him a Grammy Award, winning Best R&B Vocal Performance by a Duo or Group in 1972. Behind the scenes of that empire was a son few casual fans ever knew by name, Ike Turner Jr., born in 1958 to Ike and his then-girlfriend Lorraine Taylor, later adopted by Tina Turner herself when she married his father. Ike Jr. was pulled out of school at just 13 years old to work inside his father's own studio, Bullock Sound, where he learned every wire and knob of the recording console instead of a classroom desk. That apprenticeship became a career, and Ike Jr. grew into a respected sound engineer and musician in his own right, eventually helping run Bullock Sound himself. In 2007, 1 year after his father's death, Ike Turner Jr. stood on a Grammy stage and won Best Traditional Blues Album as producer of his father's posthumous record, Risin' with the Blues, meaning the son who once broke down his own drum kit after every practice on his mother's orders ended up finishing his father's very last chapter, statue in hand. Ike Turner Jr. passed away in October 2025, closing a family story that ran in the same rooms, on the same equipment, for nearly 50 years. Number 6, Ain't No Mountain High Enough by Diana Ross, released in 1970.
If you need me, call me.
Marked the moment the world's most famous Supreme proved she didn't need a group behind her anymore, riding the song all the way to number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 as her very first solo chart topper. That same year, Ross gave birth to her first child, Rhonda Suzanne, publicly raised as the daughter of Ross and her husband, Robert Ellis Silberstein. Though Rhonda wouldn't learn until she was 13 that her biological father was actually Motown founder Berry Gordy, the man who built the label her mother made famous. Growing up literally inside Motown's inner circle, Rhonda Ross Kendrick eventually stepped into music herself, releasing her debut solo album Rhonda in 1989 and later collaborating directly with her mother, co-writing songs that Diana Ross herself would go on to record. Rhonda built a career that spanned singing, songwriting, and acting, most notably starring on the daytime drama Another World, but music stayed the through line, and she continued performing live well into recent years, often introduced simply as Diana Ross's daughter before audiences realized just how much talent she carried on her own. It's a legacy story with a twist. Motown insiders knew for years before the public ever caught on. The daughter of one solo icon, secretly the daughter of the man who discovered her.
Or the lips that used to touch yours so tenderly.
Number 5, Walking the Dog by Rufus Thomas, released in 1963 on Stax Records. Hit number 5 on the R&B chart and cracked the Pop Top 10, cementing Rufus as Memphis royalty, the self-proclaimed world's oldest teenager, who had spent decades as the master of ceremonies at the Palace Theater on Beale Street before he ever became a chart-topping recording artist. But 3 years earlier, it was actually his teenage daughter who put the family name on the map first. In 1960, Rufus and his daughter Carla Thomas recorded a duet called "'Cause I Love You," and that single became the very first hit for a fledgling label, then still called Satellite Records, the company that would soon rename itself Stax and change soul music forever. Carla didn't stop there. She went solo that same year with "Gee Whiz Look at His Eyes," a song that broke into the pop and R&B top 10 and earned her the nickname the Queen of Memphis Soul while she was still a high school student. Rufus Thomas is officially recognized as the only father in Billboard Hot 100 history to crack the top 10 after his own daughter had already gotten there first, and together the pair kept recording duets throughout the 60s while Carla built her own catalog alongside Otis Redding, including the hit Tramp. Rufus and Carla remain, to this day, the founding father and daughter of one of the most important record labels Black America ever produced. Number 4, "Sittin' on the Dock of the Bay" by Otis Redding was recorded just days before Redding died in a plane crash. On December 10, 1967, and when it was released posthumously in early 1968, it became his only #1 hit on the Billboard Hot 100, the first posthumous #1 single in American chart history. Redding left behind 2 young sons, Dexter and Otis Redding III, who were only toddlers when their father's plane went down into a frozen Wisconsin lake. More than a decade later, in 1980, those same boys, now grown men, formed a funk and soul band called the Reddings, alongside their cousin Mark Lockett, chasing the sound their father never got to finish building. Their debut single, "Remote Control," became an international hit, climbing to number 6 on the Billboard Soul and R&B chart, and the Reddings went on to release 6 albums throughout the 1980s. Otis Redding III would later tour Europe as a guitarist for soul legend Eddie Floyd, who personally coached him into performing his own father's biggest song live on stage, telling him flatly that if he wanted the gig, he was going to have to sing "Dock of the Bay" himself. Otis III carried that torch until he passed away from cancer in April of 2023 at 59 years old, having spent a lifetime keeping his father's whistle-soaked farewell song alive for audiences who never got to see Otis Sr. perform it live even once. Number 3, "Love Train" by the O'Jays, released in 1972, became the group's signature anthem. Riding lead vocalist Eddie Levert's voice all the way to number 1 on both the Hot 100 and the R&B chart, a run that eventually landed the group in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2005. Eddie Levert had 2 sons, Gerald and Sean, who grew up in Shaker Heights, Ohio, watching their father's group headline arenas, and by 1983, they'd formed their own trio, called Levert, with childhood friend Mark Gordon. The breakthrough came in 1987, with Casanova, a single that shot to number 1 on the R&B chart, and instantly proved Gerald had inherited a voice critics described as an almost carbon copy of his father's. Gerald went on to a huge solo career, and in 1991, he and his father actually recorded a duet together, called "Baby Hold On to Me," followed by a full collaborative album titled "Father and Son," 2 generations of the same voice, on the same record, for the first time. Tragedy struck twice for Eddie Levert. Gerald died suddenly in November 2006, at just 40 years old from an accidental medication overdose, and 16 months later, his brother Sean died in a Cuyahoga County jail cell in March 2008, after being denied his prescribed anxiety medication. Eddie Levert has spent the years since keeping his son's catalog alive, releasing a Grammy-winning posthumous album of Gerald's music, and continuing to perform Love Train with the weight of everything that came after it. Number 2. I Wanna Dance with Somebody, Who Loves Me, by Whitney Houston, released in 1987. Exploded straight to number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100, and became one of the most recognizable pop soul anthems ever recorded. But the voice behind it was trained years earlier inside the choir loft of New Hope Baptist Church in Newark, New Jersey, by Whitney's own mother, gospel and soul legend Cissy Houston. Cissy wasn't a household name the way her daughter would become, but inside the music industry, she was a towering figure, a founding member of the vocal group The Sweet Inspirations, and the background voice heard behind Aretha Franklin, Elvis Presley, and her own niece, Dionne Warwick, on some of the biggest records of the 60s and 70s. Cissy personally coached Whitney's technique from childhood, insisting on the same gospel discipline and breath control that had carried her own decades-long career as one of the most in-demand session singers in American music history. When Whitney's voice hit the top of the charts with I Wanna Dance with Somebody, industry insiders immediately recognized Cissy's fingerprints in every run and every note. A direct line from the church pews of Newark to the top of the pop charts worldwide. Cissy would go on to see her daughter become one of the best-selling music artists in history, a legacy built entirely on the vocal foundation a mother laid down one Sunday choir rehearsal at a time. Number 1. Unforgettable, by Nat King Cole, released in 1951.
Unforgettable.
Became an instant pop and jazz standard, a million-selling single that turned Cole into one of the most beloved voices in American music before lung cancer took his life in 1965, when his daughter Natalie was only 15 years old. Natalie built her own successful recording career through the 1970s and 80s, but in 1991 she did something no one in the music industry had attempted at that scale before. She used studio technology to isolate her father's original 1951 vocal track and recorded herself singing alongside it, creating a literal duet between a living daughter and her father's voice, 26 years after his death. The resulting album, Unforgettable with Love, became a cultural phenomenon, and the title track swept the 1992 Grammy Awards, winning 7 trophies including both Album of the Year and Record of the Year, an almost unheard-of sweep for a cover recording. Audiences who watched Natalie perform the song live, with archival footage of her father projected beside her on stage, described it as one of the most emotional moments in modern music television history. A daughter literally singing across time to bring her father back into the room. It remains the single most famous example in American music of a legend's child not just continuing a legacy, but reaching back through technology and grief to finish a song generations in the making. And that's exactly why it takes our number 1 spot today on Blue Rhythm R&B.
It's incredible.